All right, guys, you're going to hate me, but we're going to talk about Gladiator 2 right now. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to a spoiler-filled discussion of course, Gladiator 2, the newest film from director Ridley Scott. Alright, so there will be spoilers. Movie's out, so I figured, instead of talking just a basic review, I was going to talk to some spoilers on why I was not a big fan of this movie, which is a shame because I want Ridley Scott to have a win before he passes away, and it hasn't been good for him for the last few years. But he's a very talented director. He's done more than I ever have in my life, so I can't really complain on that simple fact with him. But Gladiator 2, of course, is the long anticipated sequel to the pretty popular first original movie that won Best Picture and Best Actor. This movie picks up about 16 years later. Rome is on the edge of collapse because of the two emperors that are in charge that are brothers that are basically bloodletting, and it's just become a mass hysteria. Comes along a character named, of course, Lucius, who was the young kid in the original movie, who's played by Paul Mescal in this one movie, who, after a siege by the hands of a general played by Pedro Pascal, basically becomes a gladiator under the guise of a character played by, of course, Denzil Washington. And so in the process of everything, he goes on a journey, a quest to take the hands away from the two emperors who are very bad people. And starts to garner notice similar to the first movie. And in essence, it becomes a very, what I would call, not really interesting, but what would be a continuation, a progression of what the first movie was instilling on doing, but for better or worse, because this movie has Connie Nielsen, who comes back from the original movie. Jacobi comes back from the original movie. And now has Pedro Pascal and Denzil Washington and all that good stuff. So it's a sequel that has Lucius as the main character, played by Paul Mescal. Okay, so I don't know if I was anticipating this movie, but the closer and closer that this movie got closer to release, as a lot of these big budget Hollywood, holiday movies do, you get excited for it. Just on the simple fact that you get to see spectacle, I guess you could say. And when it came to Gladiator 2, I don't necessarily think it ever needed a sequel. I understand why it got a sequel, because Ridley Scott wanted to make a sequel, and they now finally have a sequel. This isn't written by, I think it was John Logan. This is written by David Scarpa, who has worked on stuff like, I think, House of Gucci for Ridley Scott. But, I'm going to give a movie a chance. I love Gladiator. I think it's a really competent movie. I am in agreement with a lot of people that I think Crouching Tiger should have won that year. But, it's a really fun, entertaining, epic movie in a lot of respects. So here I am, really disappointed by how I feel of Gladiator 2, which feels not necessarily half-hearted. It is definitely one of the better works that Ridley Scott has done in the last probably 10 or 15 years. The problem with this movie is it really is a beat by beat of the original movie, except instead of Maximus or Lucius dying at the end of it, Lucius lives. And in the process, Derek Jacobi's character, who is one of the senators that is with the character played by Connie Nielsen, but she also dies in the movie, which is perfectly all right. Killing off legacy characters from series is something that happens. I'm sure it's going to happen in Avatar at some point when Sam Worthington's probably going to die. It was a movie that just really fell apart really quickly. It started out really strong with, the battle sequence on the ocean with the Roman army, who was being led by the general, played by Pedro Pascal. You have Lucius, which you don't find out who he really is. People will be probably surprised until like almost an hour into the movie that you find out that's Lucius. But, I knew from IMDb and hearing all the stories, coming out from the news outlets. But the movie just really struggles to find its own identity. It really tries to harken back to the original movie. It kind of is on a crutch of that older movie. It doesn't really do anything differently. We have the character that was played by Oliver Reed in that movie, who was the one that kind of thrusted Maximus into the open. Now we have Denzil Washington, who is literally legitimately playing the same character, except his ambitions are much more expanded in this movie, which become really convoluted and don't make much sense, because he starts out as this guy who is in control of, these gladiators. He makes money, But some reason, somehow, they've decided in the story to make his character so ambitious, so scheming, so disgusting, that he just completely turns on everybody on a dime. And I guess I get it. You know, everybody who has ambitions like that will do stuff like this. But there's no real setup to that at all. It doesn't really make any sense of how quickly it turns. You know, he's able to kind of leech himself into the emperor's good graces, and he's able to use the character Lucius to that realm. And I could see that happening over time, but it feels like we're just kind of thrust into the character that Denzil Washington is playing. And as it moves along, it just doesn't really make a lot of sense on how he's able to, you know, rise so quickly. I guess because of time passage, and maybe he worked, you know, as we see, he does work a few people in this movie, but he's able to kill the first emperor, then he's able to kill the other one. He's able to get the reins of the army, of the military of Rome. He wants to burn down Rome. He wants to get rid of Lucius's mother, who's Connie Nielsen's character. Yeah, I'm sure he wants to get rid of Lucius because they find out that he's Lucius. It's just a lot of weird things. I really think Denzil Washington does a really nice job in this movie. I think he will definitely get an Oscar nomination for the role, because it is Denzil Washington doing what he does best, which is take really kind of sometimes not great characters and elevate them into much better characters. American Gangster, Fences, and of course what he did in the Equalizer series. These are movies that could be like, if it weren't for people like him, it would be kind of a weird place to place it. But I just think his arc in this movie is just really weird, to be fairly honest. It's a really strange arc. It basically elevates his character to such a high extent that it becomes such a problem. And then, you know, Lucius's character is following almost the exact same arc as Maximus's character, and it is supposed to be because he's Maximus's son that the strengths and the weaknesses of Maximus are definitely in him as a character. But he is in a battle at the beginning, he loses his wife, he goes on a quest to become a gladiator, he basically rises in popularity, which happens way too quickly and way too, like, it just doesn't make any sense. He befriends someone who's in, like, a free man, but is in prison. He ends up, you know, garnering the praise of the audience. And then he, of course, rebels. And instead of dying, he actually kills the Denzil Washington character, but also garners the people of the armies of Rome and stuff like that, and wants to become free, which is fine. There is a little bit of twist there, but it's just like you're following the basic steps of what you did in the first movie, and therefore there's nothing truly original. There's some original scenes where they fight in like the throne room of the emperors and stuff like that. You know, this movie is very much showing the audacious nature of like the way the rich and, you know, heiress and stuff like that, how they operate and how flamboyant and all that stuff is. You know, there's definitely touches of like, you know, homosexuality and homoeroticism and stuff like that between even Denzil Washington's character. It's just how that kind of plays out. And I do think that the battle sequences are fine. I think the one on the water with the ships, you know, in the Colosseum are pretty cool with the sharks. But you have monkeys, you have sharks, you have a rhino, and there's some tigers and some dogs in the cages. But once again, the monkey sequence and like once again they go to a smaller gladiatorial arena where, like they did in the first one, exactly almost like the exact same time frame, and they fight monkeys, and the monkeys look terrible. The CGI looks terrible, and then they go to the gladiatorial arena and they're fighting a rhinoceros with a guy on it, and then they're fighting sharks should have lasers on top of their freaking heads. It's too much. Like, what made the original movie so good is it only relied on things that they could acquire, like tigers and stuff like that. The tiger sequence in that scene works because it feels real. These things don't feel real. They feel CGI. They feel fake. Even the Colosseum itself feels fake. And that is a detriment to this movie, is the simple fact that they're fun to watch. There's fun sequences, but not only do they not last, but they are fake looking. And that is a huge problem with this movie. And it's also the storyline of where this movie's going, which is just all over the place. You have this idea of like the general, the Pedro Pascal character, and Connie Nielsen's character, who are now married, are trying to do a revolt against the emperors, and that doesn't play out because of Denzel Washington's character, and just a lot of nonsense that's happening, and it just becomes a lot of stuff that just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't flow together properly, and I feel kind of sad by that because this could have been a very epic movie. I do think that this movie will possibly garner a Best Picture nomination, which I think it doesn't deserve at all, but knowing Hollywood and how they feel about Ridley Scott and how they feel about the Gladiator movie, it's written all over the books, and there'll probably be like the first battle sequence looks pretty cool. On the blending of the CGI and what they use is realistic, looks pretty good, but the stuff in the Coliseum looks absolutely horrendous. It's crazy to watch. And then on top of everything, the idea of like what happens to the general, the Pedro Pascal character. He has people that are waiting in the wings for him who will help the revolt. The fact that the revolt's happening, but it's only happening in like this one small center, and it doesn't, like, none of that makes any sense. Nothing in this movie truly just works on a script level, a intrigue level, and when it goes big and when it goes spectacle, especially when they do the big thing at the end, the big action sequence where all the gladiators are fighting all the Roman soldier elites or whatever, and that just feels empty. And then what's really bad is when Connie Nielsen gets shot with an arrow by Denzel Washington's character. It just kind of happens and it's just kind of forgot about. Paul Mescal's Lucius character just kind of runs off towards Denzel Washington and it chops off his hand and kills him. But there's nothing really there that feels whole about Connie Nielsen. Was a big character in the last movie, and here she's just kind of left by the wayside. She just pouts every once in a while. It's the same thing with Derek Jacobi, who just kind of gets cut in the neck with a knife, and a lot of it just really doesn't work. It really doesn't. It's kind of strange and sad the way Pedro Pascal dies, and how much Lucius like hates him. All of a sudden, he's just not willing to kill him because his mother told him that they're married, and it's just, I don't know. I feel like this movie is so all over the place when it comes to tone and consistency and ideas, and is trying to harken back to too many plot points from the original movie, which I understand it's a sequel to the original movie, but they're so focused to the point where they're even giving Paul or Lucius the armor for Maximus, and why is his name crossed off the board and all that stuff? I don't know. It's a problem. It really is. It's really difficult to just want to enjoy this movie. If you want to enjoy it for like the spectacle, I guess that's fine. But if you really like the original movie, I think this is kind of an insult to that original movie. I really do. It's one of the most disappointing movies I've seen this year. And there is some fun to be had. And, Denzel Washington's definitely chewing scenery. But is it worth the squeeze when it comes to this being a continuation? No, I think it inhabits a really weird space for sequels, so that's how I feel. So with that said, was not a big fan of this movie, did not like it, probably one of the most disappointing movies I've seen this year. So anyways, that'll be my spoiler take on Gladiator 2, which is now in theaters. Thank you so much for watching. Comments below, as you guys always do. If you do watch my spoiler videos, tell me what you think. Do you agree? Do you disagree? It's perfectly alright if you don't agree, just tell me why. But otherwise, thank you so much. If you like what you see on this channel, hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium. Hit that notification bell at the top to find what's coming next. If you like this video, awesome. Hit that like button. And as always, we'll see you guys on the next video. Peace out, guys.